Okay, now we've talked about loops and gone through the explanation of the structures and rules for our three different types of loops. Let's focus this recording on our for loop, which is a fixed count loop. Now notice on our example program, this program presently accepts 3 test scores from the user, 3 integer test scores, and we're using the scanner as our input mechanism. Now remember, we've got our template here. We're not starting from scratch, but we still want to make sure you understand that. At the top you have all of your imports. We're using the scanner import again for our input. We have any comments. Then all your programs have your class and then your main. After that we have all of our variable declarations and initializations. Then we have all our class objects creations. Then we go down and get our data. Now this is where our loops are going to work. Notice that I'm getting 3 scores, but I have 3 completely separate inputs for my test scores. All 3 coding for the inputs look exactly the same, except the number on the score, so the prompt, and each has a variable to accept. Now we're going to turn this into the fact that really all I need is 1 input and 1 prompt to make this work, and we will iterate or loop on that code. So first off, let's get rid of the code we don't need. We don't need the other 2. Next, remember we're doing a fixed count, so I'm going to make this into a for loop. So we start off with our for, and then all 3 parts are needed. So for the initialization, I'm going to use I is 0. My condition to get me out of the loop as long as I is less than 3. And then my altering statement, I plus plus. And then I'm going to scope the code that I need. Okay. So let's look at this. At this point, here is my prompt, but it cannot say enter score 1. It can only say enter score at this point. We'll change it later on. Maybe we can get it to work better. Then we have our variable, and we put the integer in our variable. But now remember, the first time will work fine. Whenever I type in something like a 96, that'll go in score 1. But then it'll go back up, run our altering statement, recheck our condition, then go back in. So the second time through, unless I do something to this, our next input will go right over the top of the 96, and it will go in and be replaced with another number that I type in, like an 80. We want this to also make sure we've got a running total. So I'm going to go up and change this so I don't use score 1 or 2 anymore, but I do need a total. And let's create our I while we're here. Okay, so now we have our prompt, we have our input. We've got to make sure that whatever is in this score 1 is kept. So I'm going to say that total is assigned total plus score 1. Now I'm doing this the longhand way. Remember, I could do a shorthand because if your variable is on both sides of your assignment, I could get rid of the duplicated variable, take the operator, and move it in front of the assignment. And there's our shortcut. Now when we run this, it will ask for every single one of our scores, but I'll be able to keep a running total of it so I can do my average. Now that also means when I do my average, I'm going to need to tell it that it's a total. Now I am dividing by 3.0 simply because whenever I divide my total, if this was an integer instead of a number that had a decimal, the only thing I could get back would be an integer and I'd have to cast it. But this does work. Now, I want you to know that there's a reason why I used a less than instead of a less than or equal to. It's all dependent upon what number you start here. If I start at 0, if I leave the less than or equal to, if I leave the equal to in there, then it will loop one more time than I need it. If I start with 0, it's only a less than. If I start at 1, then I could go in and say less than or equal to. Now there's a couple of other things I want to make sure and take care of. This works for all our scores, but I still would like it to say enter score and then the number of the score. So I can make that happen. I have a variable that's already keeping up with an iteration or a count. So I can come in here and say plus I. And then if I wanted anything else in there. But this is going to say enter score 0. And I want something between the number and what the user types in. Now this is going to say enter score 0 because I started I at 0. I'd really like it to say 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2. But I can't accomplish this because the consistency here, the pattern is, as long as I always add 1 to I, it will be 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2. Just be aware that I can only say I plus 1. I cannot have an assignment operator anywhere in here, or it will permanently change I, and that's not what I want to happen. I only want it to do it for this display, for this moment in time, this line of execution. Now here's just a for loop, and quite a few of the little rules iterated in with it. So next we will do the other two loops. I'll stop this one so you can go look at it and maybe look at it again, review it, and go to the next loops when you're ready.